It's October 3rd, 2016 in the heart of Paris. The City of Lights is sleeping peacefully at 2:30 in the morning when suddenly 5 shadows move through the empty streets. They're dressed as police officers, but something feels wrong. Their faces are hidden behind ski masks, and their movements are too calculated, too rehearsed. One of them carries a gun that glints under the streetlights as they approach their target. Behind the heavy black gates of one of Paris's most exclusive hotels, a woman lies on her bed scrolling through her phone. She has no idea that in just moments, her life is about to change forever. She doesn't know that these 5 men have been watching her every move, studying her routine, planning this night down to the very last second. This isn't just any robbery. This is the heist that would break the internet and change how celebrities think about privacy forever. But to understand how we got to this terrifying night, we need to rewind the clock and see how the perfect storm was brewing. Because what happened that October night wasn't random. It was the result of weeks of careful planning, social media surveillance, and a level of criminal sophistication that shocked law enforcement around the world. The story begins with glamour, fame, and the dangerous game of sharing your entire life online. It ends with zip ties, duct tape, and millions of dollars worth of stolen jewelry that would never be seen again. Along the way, we'll discover how a group of aging criminals pulled off what investigators called the most audacious celebrity heist in modern history. So buckle up, because this story has everything: international intrigue, inside jobs, mysterious disappearances, and a manhunt that spanned multiple countries. By the time we're done, you'll understand why this single night didn't just traumatize one person, but sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry that are still felt today. Let's start our story 5 days earlier, on September 28, 2016. High above the Atlantic Ocean, a private jet cuts through the clouds heading straight for Paris. Inside the luxurious cabin, Kim Kardashian sits with her personal assistant and bodyguard, completely unaware that her decision to post about this trip would set in motion a chain of events that would haunt her for years to come. She was flying to Paris for Fashion Week, one of the most anticipated events in the fashion calendar. The entire city was buzzing with excitement, and Kim was set to be one of the biggest attractions. Photographers were themselves already positioning the airport. Fans were tracking her flight online, and her millions of social media followers were eagerly awaiting updates from the City of Light. At 10:40 in the morning, her jet touched down at Paris Le Bourget Airport, just outside the city. The moment she stepped off that plane, the cameras started flashing. She posed for photos, and immediately waved to fans began documenting her arrival on social media. Every step was photographed. Every location was tagged. Every detail was shared with her massive online audience. For Kim, Paris had become more than just a destination. It was her playground, her escape from the pressures of Los Angeles. She had visited the city countless times, always staying at the same exclusive hotel, always following similar routines. This familiarity made her predict safe, but itable. Soon she'd be joining Wood by her sisters Courtney and Kendall, who were flying in separately for the fashion shows. The Kardashian sisters were Paris by storm, planning to take every major show, every exclusive party, every high-profile dinner. Their presence alone could make or break a designer's collection. That week, Kim was absolutely everywhere. She attended the Givenchy show, sitting front row with other A-listed arriving celebrities. She was photographed at Off-White, where she studied the latest streetwear trends. She attended Azzedine Alaya's private dinner. Rubbing shoulders with fashion appearance generates elite. Eached headlines around the world. Cameras followed her from venue to venue like a carefully choreographed dance. Fashion, paparazzi, and fans documented her every move. Her social media followers watched her Paris adventures unfold like episodes of their reality favorite show. She shared photos of her outfits, her meals, her hotel room, her jewelry. Nothing was off limits. But here's where things get interesting. While millions of fans were admiring her posts, someone else was paying very close attention. Across the city tourists never see, in neighborhoods most, A small group of men was studying every single photo she posted. They weren't interested in fashion or celebrity gossip. They were criminals, and they were looking for an opportunity. These men came from the banlieues, the tough suburbs surrounding Paris that don't appear on tourist maps. Life in these neighborhoods was hard, and some residents had turned to crime to survive. But these weren't ordinary street criminals. They were experienced, sophisticated, and they had been planning something big for Fashion Week. The group had been meeting in quiet Parisian bars their target, discussing and refining their plan. They studied media posts like Kim's social intelligence analyst's locations, noting her security arrangements, and every importantly, her jewelry photo she posted gave them more information to work with. They noticed something crucial. While Kim traveled with a bodyguard during the day, he didn't always stay with her at night. Sometimes he would accompany her sisters to nightclubs while she returned to her hotel alone. This created a window of opportunity that experienced criminals like them knew how to exploit. The hotel she was staying at made their job both easier and harder. It was called Hôtel d'Étalès, though poor celebrities knew it as the no-address hotel. This wasn't your typical luxury hotel with a grand lobby and uniformed doormen. Instead, it was a converted 19th-century mansion hidden behind heavy black gates in one of Paris's most exclusive neighborhoods. The building had an interesting history. It was originally owned by French royalty, but in 2004, it was sold to a billionaire who converted it into an ultra-exclusive hotel. There were only 11 rooms total, each one designed for maximum privacy. Beyoncé had stayed there. Madonna had stayed there. Leonardo DiCaprio had stayed there. It was the perfect place for celebrities who wanted to disappear from public view. Kanye West actually owned one of the apartments in the building, which is how Kim first discovered the hotel. They had stayed there during their wedding trip to Paris, and she fell in love with the privacy and luxury it offered. The suite she booked for this trip cost $16,800 per night, making it one of the most expensive hotel rooms in Paris. But this privacy came with a dangerous trade-off. The hotel had minimal security compared to other luxury establishments. There was no grand lobby filled with staff and security cameras. Instead, guests entered through a narrow alley, punched in a security code, and walked to a small reception desk. The entire building was designed to be invisible, which made it perfect for celebrities, but also perfect for criminals. The men planning the heist had done their homework. They studied the hotel's layout using online photos and architectural records. They timed the police patrol routes in the neighborhood. They identified the building's vulnerabilities and planned their escape routes. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This style was a military'd been planned for weeks. They Operation That Ha also studied Kim's personal security arrangements. During Fashion Week, she traveled with Pascal Duvier, a massive German bodyguard who had protected other A-list celebrities. But they noticed that Pascal couldn't be in two places at once. When Kim's sisters went out partying at night, he would often go with them, leaving Kim alone in her hotel suite. The criminals saw this pattern and knew they had found their moment. They gathered the equipment they would need for the job. Police uniforms to command authority and avoid suspicion. Fake badges to look official. Zip ties and duct tape to restrain their victims. A handgun to ensure compliance. Bicycles for a quick and quiet escape through Paris's narrow streets. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail. They had assigned roles to each team member. They had rehearsed their timing. They had identified their target and confirmed her location. All they needed now was the right opportunity. That opportunity came on October 2nd, just 3 days into Kim's Paris Fashion Week adventure. That evening, she attended a dinner with her sisters at Azzedine Alaïa's showroom. It was supposed to be a quiet, intimate gathering with some of fashion's most influential figures. The dinner ended around 9:45, and the three sisters left together. But then, they split up. Courtney and Kendall wanted to continue their night at L'Arc, one of Paris's hottest nightclubs. Kim, however, was tired from days of fashion shows and photo shoots. She decided to head back to the hotel for an early night. This decision would change everything. Because Kim was going back to the hotel alone, Pascal made a choice that would haunt him for years. He decided to stay with Courtney and Kendall at the nightclub, figuring that two young women in a crowded club needed protection more than Kim did in her secure hotel suite. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, Kim arrived back at the no-address hotel. She was exhausted but happy, satisfied with another successful day in Paris. She took the small elevator up to her suite, removed her makeup, took a quick shower, and put on a comfortable bathrobe. She settled into bed with her phone, planning a few minutes before falling to scroll through social media for a sleep. The streets outside were quiet and peaceful. The fashion crowd had moved on to after-parties and nightclubs. The paparazzi had gone home for the night. For once, Kim was alone with her thoughts, enjoying a rare moment of privacy in her otherwise very public life. But down below, something was terribly wrong. At 2:18 in the morning, street cameras captured something that should have set off alarm bells. 3 figures on bicycles were bicycling through the empty Parisian streets, dressed in what appeared to be police uniforms. Behind them, 2 more men approached on foot. Their movements were synchronized, purposeful, like a military operation unfolding in the heart of one of the world's most romantic cities. The 5 men converged on the no-address hotel with the precision of a SWAT team. They had studied this moment for weeks, memorizing every detail of the building's layout, every weakness in its security system. The hotel's main entrance was locked at this hour, as it always was. Guests could only enter by punching in a security code or having someone inside buzz them in. When the group of 5 stood at that heavy black door, they knew exactly what to do. One of them pressed the intercom button and spoke in French, identifying himself as a police officer. The night concierge, a middle-aged man who had been working quietly at his desk, looked at his security monitor and saw appear what to be legitimate law enforcement officers. Without hesitation, he buzzed them in. This was the moment when everything went wrong. The concierge had no way of knowing that the uniforms were fake, purchased from a costume shop weeks earlier. The badges were counterfeit, printed on cheap metal and designed to fool people in low-light situations. Even the confident way the men carried themselves was rehearsed, practiced in front of mirrors until they could convincingly impersonate French police officers. As soon as they entered the building, the true nature of their mission became clear. This wasn't a police investigation. It was an armed robbery, and the night concierge was their first victim. The leader of the group was a 60-year-old man named Omar Ait K. Everyone on the streets knew Dash, though him as old Omar. Despite his age, he was far from retired. Omar had spent decades in Paris's criminal underworld, building a reputation for sophisticated heists and high-end thefts. He had served time in prison, learned from his mistakes, and emerged as one of the most respected in the old third-school Parisian crime scene. Omar working team alone. His included Eunice Abbas, who 60 at 2 was even older, but their equally experienced was also Didier Dubruck, nicknamed Blue Eyes, a man with ice-cold nerves and a talent for staying invisible. The members youngest of the crew were still in their 40s, making this of the most senior one-citizen crime sprees in recent memory. But don't let their ages fool you. These men were professionals who'd been planning celebrity robberies since before social media existed. They understood that modern criminals needed to adapt to a digital world where victims documented their every move online. Kim's Instagram posts had given them a complete intelligence briefing without her even realizing it. The concierge found himself staring down the barrel of a gun, his comfortable night shift suddenly transformed into a nightmare. In broken French mixed with threatening gestures, the men demanded to know where the American celebrity was staying. The terrified hotel employee had no choice but to comply. 2 members of the crew stayed in the lobby area to control the entrance and watch for police. Another positioned himself outside as a lookout, ready to signal if anything went wrong. This left Omar and Blue Eyes to handle the actual robbery upstairs. They forced the concierge to lead them through the hotel's narrow corridors toward Kim's suite. The building was completely silent except for their footsteps on the marble floors. Every other guest was either asleep or out enjoying Paris's legendary nightlife. Kim was alone and completely unaware of what was coming. Meanwhile, 3 floors above, Kim was lying in bed scrolling through her phone. She was looking at photos from the dinner she had just attended, maybe planning some posts for the next morning. Her massive engagement ring caught the light from her phone screen, the $4 million diamond that Kanye had surprised her with just days earlier. She had no idea that this ring, which she had proudly shown off in dozens of social media posts, had essentially painted a target on her back. Professional thieves don't just steal randomly. Their targets study, they research their habits, and calculate the potential payoff. Kim's jewelry collection, documented in detail across her social media accounts, represents the suite of a lifetime. The score she was staying in was worth $16,800 per night, but it might as well have been a prison cell. There was no emergency button, no direct line to security, no way to call for help except her personal phone. The privacy that made the hotel so appealing to celebrities also made it perfect for criminals. ATD something that made her look up from her phone. 2:25 in the morning, Kim heard footsteps in the hallway outside her room, which was strange because she thought she was the only guest on that floor. Then she heard voices speaking in hushed French, followed by what sounded like keys jingling. Ford of Hotel Summer moment. She wondered staff were doing kind of late-night maintenance. Maybe there was a problem with another room that be fixed needed Todd. She went back to her phone, not particularly concerned. Burst open. Door. That's when her two masked figures stormed into her suite, dragging the bound and gagged hotel concierge with them. Kim's first instinct was to think this might be some kind of prank. Maybe another annoying pre-read her earlier in Stunt by That the Week. But then Angster, who had both, she saw the gun, and everything became terrifyingly real. She tried to call Pascal, her bodyguard, but one snatched her of the men's phone away before the call could connect. They her in French. Words were shouting at she didn't understand but could interpret from their tone and gestures. They wanted her on the ground, and they wanted her there immediately. Kim found herself face down on the cold marble floor of her luxury suite, her hands being tied behind her back with plastic zip ties. She was wearing nothing but a bathrobe, which had come loose during the struggle, leaving her feeling completely vulnerable and exposed. Omar approached her with a roll of duct tape, his movements calm and methodical. This wasn't his first robbery, and he knew that controlling the victim was the key to a successful heist. He pulled the tape across her mouth, then bound her legs together. Within minutes, Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous women in the world, had become a helpless victim in her own hotel room. Blue Eyes stood over her with the gun, making sure she understood the seriousness of the situation. Meanwhile, Omar began searching the suite with who knew exactly the efficiency of someone what he was looking for. He wasn't interested in her clothes or her electronics. He wanted jewelry, and he knew she had plenty of it. Kim lay on the floor, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She couldn't scream, couldn't move, couldn't call for help. All she could do was watch as these strangers ransacked her private space, taking everything of value they could find. Omar found her jewelry box and began emptying it into a duffel bag. Necklaces, earrings, bracelets, rings. Everything went into the bag with practiced efficiency. But he was looking for something specific, and when lit up with satisfaction, he found it. His eyes. The engagement ring. $4 million worth of flawless diamond, sitting in a small velvet box like it was waiting to be stolen. Omar held it up to the light, examining the stone that had been featured in countless social media posts. This single piece of jewelry was worth more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. But the ring wasn't the only prize. Kim's jewelry collection was worth an estimated $10 million, and most of it was sitting right there in her hotel suite. Gold chains, diamond earrings, luxury watches, precious stones from the world's most exclusive jewelers. It was a thief's dream come true. The entire robbery took less than 20 minutes from start to finish. The men worked with the efficiency of a pit crew, taking only what was valuable and portable. They left behind anything that would be difficult to fence or too risky to carry. As they prepared to leave, Omar made a decision that would haunt Kim for years to come. Instead of simply tying her up in the bedroom, he dragged her into the marble bathroom and left her there with the bound concierge. The cold tile floor felt like ice against her skin as she listened to the robbers moving around her suite, finishing their work. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. She could hear voices in the distance, footsteps moving away, and finally the sound of the suite door closing. The robbers were gone, vanishing into the Paris night as quickly as they had appeared. But Kim wasn't alone in the suite. Her friend and been sleeping stylist, Simonio Harch, downstairs the entire time. She woke up when she immediately knew she heard Kim screaming, and something terrible was happening. Instead of running upstairs to help, she made the smart decision to lock herself in the bathroom and call for help. Simone managed to reach Pascal at the nightclub, frantically explaining that something was bad happening at the hotel. The body massive guard immediately left Courtney and Kendall at Lark and raced back toward the no-address hotel, his mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. By the time Pascal arrived at the hotel, the robbers were long gone. He found the building in chaos. The concierge was traumatized, the police were just beginning to arrive, and Kim was still locked in that marble bathroom, shaking uncontrollably from the ordeal she had just survived. The 5 men had escaped on bicycles, a surprisingly brilliant choice for navigating Paris's narrow streets and avoiding detection. While police cars would have stood out in the quiet neighborhood, cyclists could blend in with the city's normal traffic patterns. They pedaled through the empty streets like ghosts, carrying millions of dollars in stolen jewelry in simple backpacks and duffel bags. But they made one crucial mistake during their escape. In their rush to get away from the scene, one of the robbers dropped a piece of Kim's jewelry onto the street. It was a platinum cross worth around $31,000, and it would later become a key piece of evidence in the investigation that followed. The next morning, a passerby found the cross lying on a Parisian sidewalk and turned it over to police. But by then, the story had already exploded across every news outlet in the world. The robbery of Kim Kardashian wasn't just a crime. It was a global media sensation that dominated headlines for weeks. Within hours of the robbery, Kim was on a private jet back to New York, hiding her face under a black blanket as photographers tried to capture images of her trauma. For the first time in her career, she went completely silent on social media. No Instagram posts, no Twitter updates, no public appearances. Friends and family said she barely spoke, spending most of her time at home with her children, trying to process what had happened to her. Meanwhile, French police were launching one of the most intensive investigations in recent memory. They had almost nothing to work with initially. The robbers had worn gloves, used burner phones, and stolen the bicycles they escaped on. The crime scene was clean, professional, and frustratingly devoid of obvious clues. But investigators had one advantage that the robbers hadn't counted on. Paris is one of the most surveilled cities in Europe, with thousands of security cameras monitoring every street corner, every intersection, every major building. The police began the painstaking process of reviewing footage from dozens of cameras, tracking the movements of 5 men in police uniforms through the heart of the city. They also had the dropped platinum cross, which they hoped might yield DNA evidence or fingerprints. Every piece of jewelry in Kim's collection had been photographed and cataloged by insurance companies, making it easier to track if any pieces surfaced in the international art and jewelry markets. The investigation revealed just how sophisticated this robbery really was. The men hadn't just stumbled upon an opportunity. They had been planning this heist for weeks. They had studied Kim's social media posts like intelligence analysts, noting her travel patterns, her security arrangements, and most importantly, her jewelry collection. Every photo she posted gave them more information to work with. Pictures of her wearing expensive pieces told them what to look for. Photos of her hotel room revealed the layout and security features. Even casual shots of her daily routine helped them understand when she might be alone and vulnerable. The robbers had also done extensive reconnaissance on the hotel itself. They knew about the building's history, its security weaknesses, and its exclusive clientele. They understood that the no-address hotel's privacy features, which made it so appealing to celebrities, also made it perfect for criminals. French authorities quickly realized they were dealing with experienced professionals, not opportunistic street criminals. The precision of the operation, the quality of the fake police uniforms, and the clean escape all pointed to a crew with decades of experience in high-end heists. But professional criminals, no matter how experienced, always make mistakes eventually. And in this case, those mistakes would come back to haunt them in ways they never anticipated. The first breakthrough in the investigation came from an unexpected source. While reviewing security footage from around the hotel, police noticed something interesting about the bicycles used in the escape. They weren't random bikes stolen off the street. They were specific models that had been reported stolen from a rental company just days before the robbery. This led investigators to review footage from around the bike rental location, where they spotted some of the same men who would later appear in the hotel security videos slowly. But surely, the police were building a case, connecting dots that would eventually lead them straight to the robbers' front doors. The second major breakthrough came from the robbers themselves. Despite their professional planning and execution, they made a critical error in the days following the heist. One of the crew members, still high on adrenaline from pulling off such a massive score, couldn't resist bragging about their success to friends and associates in the Parisian underworld. Word travels fast in criminal circles, and it wasn't long before police informants began reporting rumors about who was responsible for the Kardashian robbery. These whispers, combined with the physical evidence and security footage, gave investigators the leads they needed to identify their suspects. But identifying the robbers was only half the battle. The stolen jewelry had vanished completely, likely smuggled out of France within hours of the robbery. Professional thieves know that holding on to stolen goods is one of the fastest ways to get caught, so the jewelry had probably been sold to fences or smuggled to other countries where it could be broken down and resold. Most experts believe the jewelry ended up in Antwerp, Belgium, which serves as the unofficial diamond capital of the world. There, skilled craftsmen could disassemble expensive pieces, remove identifying marks, and transform stolen jewelry into completely new creations that would be impossible to trace back to the original theft. This meant that Kim's $4 million engagement ring, along with the rest of her collection, had probably been destroyed within days of the robbery. The precious stones might have been reset into new pieces, while the gold and platinum settings were likely melted down and reformed. It was a heartbreaking reality for Kim, who had lost not just valuable jewelry, but pieces with deep personal and emotional significance. The psychological impact of the robbery was even more devastating than the financial loss. Kim had built her career on sharing intimate details of her life with millions of followers around the world. Her social media presence was carefully crafted to make fans feel like they were part of her daily experience, seeing her homes, her family, her possessions, and her travels in real time. But the robbery had revealed the dark side of this radical transparency. By sharing so much of her life online, she had inadvertently provided criminals with everything they needed to plan and execute the perfect heist. Her Instagram posts had become a criminal's instruction manual, showing them exactly what to steal and where to find it. The trauma of that realization was almost as severe as the robbery itself. Kim began questioning every aspect of her public persona, wondering how many other dangerous people might be studying her social media posts, planning their own crimes, waiting for their own opportunities to strike. She started traveling with enhanced security, stopped posting photos of expensive jewelry, and even took a months-long break from social media, something that shocked fans who had grown accustomed to her constant online presence. The woman who had built an empire on radical transparency was suddenly forced to live like a recluse, afraid of what might happen if she shared too much of her life with the world. The investigation continued for months, with French police working around the clock to build cases against their suspects. They were dealing with experienced criminals who knew how to cover their tracks, but modern investigative techniques were slowly closing the net around them. DNA evidence from the zip ties used to bind Kim provided crucial forensic proof. Phone records revealed communications between suspected crew members in the days before and after the robbery. Financial investigations showed suspicious transactions that might be connected to the sale of stolen goods. Most importantly, the robbers' own arrogance was working against them. Several crew members had been unable to resist talking about their involvement in what they saw as the crime of the century. These conversations, picked up by police informants and surveillance operations, provided the final pieces of evidence needed to make arrests. The net was closing, and soon the men who had terrorized Kim Kardashian in that Paris hotel room would find themselves facing the full weight of the French justice system. But even as police prepared to make their move, questions remained about how this robbery had been planned and executed with such precision. Was it really just the result of social media surveillance? Or had the robbers received inside information from someone with access to Kim's travel plans and security arrangements? The answers to those questions would soon shock everyone involved in the case. 3 months after that terrifying October night, the investigation had reached a critical turning point. French police had spent countless hours analyzing security footage, following paper trails, and tracking down leads from informants in the Parisian underworld. The pressure to solve the most high-profile celebrity robbery in recent history was immense, and investigators knew they were running out of time before the trail went completely cold. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While reviewing financial records connected to the suspects, investigators discovered a pattern of suspicious transactions that occurred in the days immediately following the robbery. Small amounts of cash were being withdrawn from accounts linked to known associates of the crew, suggesting that the stolen jewelry was being converted to liquid assets much faster than anyone had anticipated. This discovery led police to focus their surveillance on specific neighborhoods in the Parisian suburbs, areas where they suspected the robbers might be hiding or conducting their business. They set up monitoring equipment, enlisted the help of local informants, and began the painstaking process of watching and waiting for their targets to make a mistake. The mistake came sooner than expected. On a cold January morning, French authorities launched a massive coordinated operation across multiple locations in Paris and its surrounding suburbs. They had spent weeks planning this moment, ensuring that every suspect would be arrested simultaneously to prevent anyone from fleeing or destroying evidence. At exactly 6 in the morning, police teams surrounded 17 different addresses across the city. The operation was timed to catch the suspects while they were still asleep, minimizing the risk of resistance or escape attempts. Officers wore full tactical gear and carried warrants for arrests that had been months in the making. Younis Abbas, the 62-year-old lookout from the robbery crew, was the first to be taken into custody. Police found him in a modest apartment in the suburbs, still in his pajamas when they broke down his door. The man who had helped orchestrate one of the most audacious celebrity heists in history was arrested without incident, his decades of criminal experience unable to save him from the long arm of French law enforcement. Omar Ait Kedache, the crew's leader, was arrested at his girlfriend's apartment in another part of the city. The 60-year-old criminal mastermind had been living quietly, apparently believing that enough time had passed for the investigation to cool off. He was wrong. Police found him eating breakfast at a small kitchen table, his calm demeanor finally cracking when he realized his criminal career was over. Blue Eyes Didier Dubruck was caught in bed, awakened by the sound of officers storming through his front door. The man who had pointed a gun at Kim Kardashian just months earlier was now face down on his bedroom floor, hands zip-tied behind his back in cruel irony. One by one, the remaining suspects were rounded up across Paris. The synchronized raids were a masterpiece of police coordination, with each team arriving at their target location within minutes of each other. By 8 in the morning, 17 people were in custody, including the 5 men who had actually entered Kim's hotel suite that night. The arrests sent shockwaves through the French media and the international entertainment industry. News outlets around the world ran headlines about the capture of the so-called Grandpa Gang, mocking the advanced age of most of the suspects. But investigators knew better than to underestimate these men based on their ages. They were dealing with career criminals with decades of experience in high-end thefts. Kim was informed of the arrests within hours of the raids. For the first time since that October night, she felt a sense of relief and closure. The men who had traumatized her were finally behind bars, facing serious criminal charges that could result in lengthy prison sentences. But even this good news couldn't erase the psychological scars left by the robbery. The evidence against the suspects was overwhelming. DNA samples from the zip ties matched several of the arrested men. Security camera footage showed them approaching and fleeing from the hotel. Phone records revealed conversations between crew members in the days before and after the robbery. Financial investigations uncovered suspicious transactions that suggested involvement in the sale of stolen goods. But perhaps most damning of all were the suspect's own admissions. Several crew members, faced with irrefutable evidence of their involvement, began cooperating with investigators in hopes of receiving reduced sentences. Their confessions provided prosecutors with detailed accounts of how the robbery was planned and executed. Omar, as the crew's leader, had been responsible for most of the planning and coordination. He had studied Kim's social media posts obsessively, noting her travel patterns, her jewelry collection, and her security arrangements. He had also conducted extensive reconnaissance on the hotel, learning about its layout, its security weaknesses, and its staff routines. The crew had spent weeks preparing for the robbery, acquiring fake police uniforms, studying escape routes, and rehearsing their roles. They had even practiced zip-tying victims and moving through dark buildings without making noise. This wasn't a crime of opportunity, but a carefully orchestrated military-style operation. But investigators also discovered something that shocked even experienced detectives. The robbers hadn't just relied on social media surveillance to plan their crime. They had received inside information from someone with access to Kim's travel itinerary and security arrangements. The investigation revealed that Kim's chauffeur, who had driven her around Paris during Fashion Week, was among the 17 people arrested in the coordinated raids. Police suspected that he had provided the robbers with crucial intelligence about Kim's movements, her hotel arrangements, and her security protocols. This revelation was devastating for Kim, who realized that someone she had trusted with her safety had potentially betrayed her to dangerous criminals. The chauffeur had been in a perfect position to observe her routine, note when she was alone, and communicate this information to people planning to harm her. Phone records showed suspicious communications between the chauffeur and known associates of the robbery crew in the days leading up to the heist. Financial investigations revealed that he had received unexplained payments shortly after the robbery. While he maintained his innocence, the circumstantial evidence was compelling enough for prosecutors to include him in their case. The hotel concierge who had been forced to lead the robbers to Kim's suite was also questioned extensively. Some investigators suspected that he might have been complicit in the crime, perhaps providing information about the hotel's security systems or Kim's presence in the building. However, further investigation revealed that he was likely an innocent victim who had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. As the legal process began, the case attracted international attention. The trial was scheduled to take place in Paris, where all 10 suspects would face charges including armed robbery, kidnapping, and criminal association. The potential sentences ranged from several years to more than a decade in prison, depending on each individual's level of involvement. The French media dubbed the defendants the Grandpa Gang due to their advanced ages, with most suspects being in their 50s and 60s. This unusual demographic profile highlighted how the robbery had been planned and executed by experienced professionals rather than young, opportunistic criminals. During the pre-trial proceedings, Omar made an unexpected gesture that generated significant media coverage. He wrote a personal letter to Kim, apologizing for the trauma he had caused and expressing regret for his actions. The letter was brief but seemed genuine, acknowledging the psychological damage inflicted by the robbery. However, Kim's representatives indicated that the apology did little to heal the wounds left by that October night. She continued to struggle with anxiety, paranoia, and a deep mistrust of the security systems that had failed to protect her. The robbery had fundamentally changed how she approached her public life and personal safety. The missing jewelry remained a central mystery throughout the investigation. Despite extensive searches and international cooperation with law enforcement agencies, none of Kim's stolen pieces were ever recovered. The $4 million engagement ring, along with millions of dollars worth of other jewelry, had vanished completely into the international black market. Investigators believed that the jewelry had been quickly transported out of France, probably within hours of the robbery. Professional fences in the diamond trade could disassemble expensive pieces, remove identifying features, and transform stolen goods into untraceable new creations. The precious stones might have been reset, while gold and platinum settings were likely melted down and reformed. This reality was particularly heartbreaking for Kim, who had lost pieces with deep personal and sentimental value. The engagement ring, in particular, represented not just financial worth but emotional significance that could never be replaced or compensated. As the trial date approached, prosecutors prepared their case against the 10 defendants. They had DNA evidence, security footage, phone records, financial transactions, and eyewitness testimony. The evidence was so overwhelming that several defense attorneys advised their clients to consider plea bargains rather than risk even harsher sentences at trial. The case also raised broader questions about celebrity security and the dangers of social media oversharing. Security experts used the robbery as a case study in how criminals could exploit information willingly shared by high-profile individuals online. Kim's Instagram posts had essentially provided a blueprint for the perfect heist, showing criminals exactly what to steal and where to find it. The entertainment industry took notice, with many celebrities reassessing their social media strategies and security protocols. Some stopped posting photos of expensive jewelry or luxury possessions. Others hired additional security personnel or changed their travel routines to be less predictable. Kim herself became an advocate for digital privacy and security awareness. She began speaking about the dangers of oversharing personal information online, warning other celebrities and public figures about the potential consequences of their social media habits. In the end, the trial delivered justice, but couldn't undo the damage. Omar received 8 years in prison, while his accomplices got sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years. Yet most would serve their time on probation, a lenient outcome that shocked observers worldwide. The stolen jewelry worth $10 million was never recovered, likely transformed beyond recognition in diamond-cutting houses across Europe. But the real impact goes far beyond missing jewels or prison sentences. This single night changed how celebrities think about privacy forever. Kim's ordeal became a cautionary tale about the hidden dangers of our digital age, where every post, every photo, every shared moment can become ammunition for those with criminal intent. The robbery that broke the internet ultimately broke something else: the illusion that fame and fortune could protect you from the darkest corners of human nature. Sometimes the price of living your life in public is higher than anyone should have to pay.